I want to say this because a lot of folks have asked, and most annual conferences that I preach at, there isn't enough understanding of Latino culture to know that my name is spelled Jorge, but I call myself George. And when I went before the Board of Ordained Ministry, somebody insinuated that I was somehow trying to hide my Latino culture. And I said, well, my last name's not Smith, it's Jorge Acevedo. But I want you to know, it's a very interesting family history. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, when I was a kid. My dad was in the United States Air Force, 25-year veteran. Joined the United States Army Air Corps before it was the United States Air Force to get out of the poverty of Puerto Rico. And so we lived in Charleston Air Force Base, and my mother called me George. And I blame her for this, okay? It's Mom's fault. And but if you think about it, we're talking about 1960s in the Deep South, and except around the border states, and in Miami, there was not a lot of Latinos. And so I think it was survival, just kind of a cultural survival. So I've only known myself as George, and if you think I should be called Jorge, you just have to take it up with Mama. And she's a tongue-speaking United Methodist woman.
Boy.
And so, yeah, you don't want to take that girl on, so I've tried. So last night, my assignment was to talk about the faithfulness that goes before fruitfulness. And I tried to live more on the charisma, the declaration, the preaching side of my role. This morning, I want to flip it to the other side, and I want us to talk about fruitfulness. I want us to get to really the theme about new places for new people. And I want us to talk together about what does it mean for us to be fruitful that flows out of our faithfulness to God. And what does it mean for us as a unique people? Because we're followers of Jesus in the Wesleyan way. We're followers of Jesus in the Wesleyan way. And what was the unique genius of the early Methodist movement? That has been a question that has captivated me for the last 20 years in this experiment that we call Grace Church down in Southwest Florida. What might it mean for us to take these eternal principles that the early Methodists had a hold of and drag them some 300 plus years into the 21st century and seek to live them out in a new way? Now, there's a lot of talk in the church about being more organic, less institutional, and I think those are good things for us to do. I think anytime we can be more organic in our thinking, in our understandings, and in our life together, I think it's better because organisms have life. Organizations tend to get bogged down. It's part of the struggle we're in as the United Methodist Church. Our paradigm is relational, and yet somehow over the decades we've become overwhelmingly organizational. And in some ways we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner. And what might it mean for us to reclaim some of our organic dynamics? So I want you to imagine that you have a handful of seed. And that seed might represent your kingdom potential. Your kingdom potential. You might think, let's think locally, think of your local church's kingdom potential. And let me just say this. When you read the parables of Jesus, one of the things you have to take serious note over is that not everybody gets the same amount of seed.
That's right.
The manager gave to one talent, to the other 2, to the other 5. I mean, not everybody gets the same amount. And I made fun of my dear friend Adam Hamilton, who I love, and Mike Slaughter, who I love, and Rudy, and listen, they're 5 talent leaders. God's given them more capacity. And let me just remind you, I'm going to say this afternoon at the ordination service. Comparison isn't of the devil. Comparison is the devil. We got to get over the fact that there's a handful of people that are really, really smart, and then there's the rest of us. Okay? So your fistful of seed might be not as big as the person sitting next to you, but hey, you didn't do anything to deserve that fistful of seed. It's grace anyhow, right? So you have seed, and you get to plant that seed in soil to produce a harvest. So I brought 3 pictures. Would you show the first picture, Bob? This is our beautiful parking lot at Grace Church in Cape Coral. We have very sandy soil. And my question is, can you grow something there? We can grow something there. There's an old palm tree, and there's some weeds. So you can grow something there. So you can take your fistful of soil, or a seed, you can plant it in that soil, and you might grow something. Now, our church has a community garden. Show them the next picture, Bob. And you can take your handful of seed, and you can go down and see Scott and his team, and they would take your seed, and they would plant it in the soil there where we have a well, and Scott's background is in agriculture. And would you get more harvest here than you would in the parking lot? Yeah, significant. Now you can take that same handful of seed that you didn't deserve, but God gave you, and you can take it down to the Fort Myers Hydroponic Garden. Would you show the next one? And they can almost guarantee 1 plant for 1 seed, because they've got it down to a science. Now, it's still the same amount of seed. What's the difference? The difference is the environment or the culture. Here's the principle. In creating a culture of discipleship in your church, the systems and strategy, consider that the soil. The systems and strategies you create will determine the harvest you get. In creating a culture of discipleship in your church, the systems and strategies you create will determine the harvest you get. I served on the board of ordained ministry at the Florida Annual Conference for 10 years. I'm going to die sooner because of those 10 years, I'm telling you. That was a lot of work. And I remember one day we asked a student, how would you lead somebody to Christ? And the student's response was, I'd put them on a committee. He said, I don't think that's the answer we're looking for. In creating a culture of discipleship in your church, the systems and strategies you create will determine the harvest you get. And yet we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to put people on committees, thinking that somehow that if we can just fill that little slate of officers, that somehow that's going to grow disciples in our church. Newsflash, it ain't working. It's not working. The second campus we adopted was Central United Methodist Church. There were 30 people, 30 angry octogenarians in that church. All white, in a multicultural, very young, drug-addicted community. We adopted that church, and we spent a year working with them as a standalone congregation, and they voted at a congregational vote. They voted to become a campus of Grace Church. On Sunday morning, there were 30 people in worship. On Monday evening, for the vote, there were 40 people at the meeting. It was like Weekend at Bernie's, man. They dug people up and had them. You ever seen that movie? Google it. Here's what the superintendent stood in front of the committee and said. You get to vote today whether you're going to become a campus of Grace Church and have a future with hope, or close. Those are the 2 options. Become a campus, future with hope, or close. I was confident that the vote was going to be 40-0. But when we got done counting the votes, it was 23-17.
Wow.
I sat in my car and I wept because 17 United Methodist Christians voted to close instead of choose a future with hope. And here's the deal, when I get beyond the emotion of the deal, it was because we have a culture of discipleship. We are collectively to blame for that kind of mentality, for that kind of lack of faith. That they would rather close a church that, mind you, today sees 600 people every week in recovery ministries.
Wow.
This is a Pentecostal meeting, somebody would have shouted out.
Amen.
A church today that is black and white and red and yellow, it's every color, it's every hue, it's every imaginable kind of lifestyle on the planet. And every year we baptize dozens and dozens of freshly redeemed people in this church where 17 United Methodists said we'd rather close than choose that future.
Amen.